we are meaning making, which is a human activity. Nicole asks us to join today in engaging in meaning making so that we can respond to the world with our own selves and our own gifts. So here's Nicole and why.
A few weeks ago, I was at a pharmacy, one that connected to a walk-in clinic. Adults with children filled the chairs and spilled onto the floor. One child with his runny nose would slide off the chair and run around before coming back to take a seat. His parent, who had already been waiting a while, would remind him to stay sitting next to her. My guess is he was about 2 or 3 years old. At first, he responded by stomping his foot on the ground with a firm no, as they do. But then he followed it up with why? And no matter what answer he received, he answered with the same question. Come, sit down on the chair. Why? So mommy can see you. Why? Because it's busy and I don't want you to get lost. Why? I want to make sure you're safe. Why? And it went on. In one study, it was noted that children between the ages of 2 and 10 years old ask an average of 228 questions per day of their caregivers. Any adults with children might totally understand that. I know I do. This question, why, is an important developmental milestone. Physiologically, it is brought on by a development of our left hemisphere, which is really just trying to understand how the world works. Dr. Tina Payne Bryson, a psychotherapist and the author of The Whole Brain Child, reminds us that when children are asking the question, why, it is a reflection of their deep curiosity, a primer for significant learning to take place. Even at that age, there is a recognition that there are folks who have been doing this thing called life for a little longer than they have, who have wisdom and insights and experiences to offer. This same drive that encourages preschoolers to try to understand the world around them, this is the same one that we use in the scientific method. And we learn this at a young age. You see this question of why plastered all over elementary school science fairs as we set out on our quest to understand all these big, wondering questions of ours. And as a result, we have come to learn a lot more about the world. Because when we know something, we connect with a sense of safety and comfort and confidence. It can help orient us and ground us when life gets messy. At the same time, we recognize how much more we have yet to learn. Life is so much bigger than we can possibly understand, and we hold this innate drive of curiosity. Now, this question of why is also the most frequent question I hear as a spiritual care provider. Except there, I don't have the answers. These questions most easily arise when we are in a period of transition or crisis. In the hospital, where there are new diagnoses or changes in prognosis, the questions sound like this. Why this? Why now? Why me? In their book, Burnout, by Emily and Amelia Nagoski, they share a story about a friend who was wondering if her marriage would be over. Their friend, whom they've named Julie in the book, tells of a time when she had food poisoning. Julie quips, "At least with food poisoning, you know why it's happening. It makes the suffering easier to deal with." When I engage with people in the hospital, they are often engaged in that deep work of meaning making. And it becomes an essential part of their healthcare. In conjunction with medical professionals, we come alongside to explore these deep questions. Because the science also shows that when a person is connected to a sense of purpose and meaning, it reduces depression, anxiety, and even improves quality of life. Of course, there are no easy answers. We still do not know everything there is to know about the human body, and we know it doesn't operate in isolation. Our environment and our psyche have a significant role to play in our health and our well-being. And these questions are so much more than seeking answers about physiology alone. Most often, these questions arise alongside parts of their story, times when they've been hurt and scared and worried, abandoned and lonely, when they have faced adversity. Our role in these times isn't to show up with the answers, but it is to show up with the good news of our faith. What it means to be in relationship with one another as we engage with the unknown and even the unknowable. We are there to witness them as whole and holy in that moment and in their journey of meaning making. Of course, some people find answers, whether that comes from their healthcare team, from the divine of their understanding, from family and friends, or from within themselves. Life, including suffering, is a little easier when we feel it has purpose in the larger story of the world. Dr. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist whose family was killed by Nazis and he himself was in 4 concentration camps, experienced and witnessed this search for meaning in those horrendous conditions. He noticed that those who were engaged in the search, not necessarily having the answers, had an important resource and a strength that would help them cope with each new day. He details these experiences in his book, Man's Search for Meaning. In the last half of the book, he writes about the school of psychotherapy he developed, logotherapy, which posits that the search for meaning itself is a potential solution to suffering. And you don't need the answer for it to be effective. Dr. Frankl, who was Jewish, not Unitarian Universalist, I think would likely agree with the line in one of our hymns, which says that even to question truly is an answer. The beauty about questions is that they are meant to engage us in relationship. In not knowing everything there is to know, we are invited to explore. And so how do we come to find our purpose, our why? How do we come to understand the meaning of our lives? Many of the world's religious traditions invite us into practices, times of reflection and contemplation, where we explore our own gifts. In the Sufi tradition, the mystical branch of Islam, there is an understanding that each of us carries a precious jewel. And this jewel is the gift that we offer the world, and it is also the lens through which we experience the world. To come to know the jewel which you carry, folks are invited to reflect on times where they have felt their most authentic. Times where there was no need for a mask or to change anything in order to fit in. What qualities ground your being? In the Sufi tradition, once this feeling of authenticity feels really solid, People are invited to read through the 99 names of Allah. Each name is a quality of the divine. Which of these qualities is yours to reflect into the world? Is your heart one that is grounded in compassion, justice, witnessing, peace? Of course, language alone can't capture the way that these same gifts can be expressed in the world. So many people share the same gift, but the way it comes to life can be very different. In the Sufi practice, it is the relationship with the divine that can help make sense of the world. It is a practice that centers interdependence, relationship. We know that no one gets through life alone. This is brought full circle in training for ministry, where we ask Unitarian Universalist candidates for ministry to take at least one unit of clinical psycho-spiritual education. This formation invites us into reflection about oneself, the impact we have on those around us, as well as skills in pastoral care informed by psychotherapeutic approaches. The course is structured in such a way that each student is invited to reflect on their own life story and the ways it intersects with those of their peers and their clients. Time is set aside to explore interpersonal relations, the ways in which relationships can be ruptured, repaired, and even strengthened in the context of a covenantal community. That should sound pretty familiar to most of us. At the end of all of this, each person writes their final evaluation, and they state what they have learned from each person and what they have taught each person. This process of reflecting on what you have offered each individual is one where many people get stuck, at least for a time, myself included. During one of my units, I turned to my peers for help. What did I teach you? I wanted to know what lessons had stayed with them from our interactions. And they were wonderful in sharing what they felt they had received from our time together. Not only that, they helped me move to another unit with a better understanding of my gifts and the ways that we can teach one another. And it wasn't only the tangible examples, things like teaching about one's faith tradition, leading conversations about consent, that stayed with folks. Currently, I work with a colleague who has many more decades of life experience than I do. And she is the one who encourages all of us to take a break at lunchtime for connection and conversation. Not only that, she invites us to engage in play. Play isn't a gift that comes naturally to me. And so that is something that I need in my life and something that I continue to learn. In our Unitarian Universalist circles, each of us uses a different language to identify and connect with what is sacred. We have decided that what we hold in common is the ways in which we will strive to be in right relationship with one another. Another one of our hymns reminds us of this, because we need to give and receive, knowing that life comes from this sharing. That's a paraphrase. That's not the actual words of the hymn. We are not in right relationship when we ignore and even hide our gifts. That work of self-awareness is the key to how we build and strengthen our communities. And at the same time, there is grace. We don't need to have it all figured out. We don't need the answers. What we experience here is a commitment to the journey, to the ongoing search for truth and meaning. We experience this in our ongoing commitments to social justice, something that is so much larger than ourselves. Because if we are honest, we know that in our own lifetimes, we are not likely to see the end of the oppressions unless there is a miracle. And still, we answer the call. Still, with faith, we engage with this sense of purpose in the world, and we bring our liberal religious voice and presence into the public square. We might always be asking that faithful question, why, as we engage life to understand our purpose and meaning. As we do, let us be informed by those moments of authenticity which keep us engaged in our seeking with a deep spirit of curiosity and wonder. May we live boldly into our questions, learning to reframe them, learning to ask them in trusted relationships, and seeking answers in the unexpected places. May it be so, because we make it so.